Imagine the roar of engines tearing the air over the English Channel, the frantic whiz of bullets past your canopy as you wrench the stick left, locked in a deadly dance with a menacing Messerschmitt, smoke billowing from your wing, but your pulse hammering with the fierce will to survive and hit back. That, my friends, was the raw, heart-stopping reality of air combat in World War II. It was a time when courageous pilots in legendary aircraft fundamentally shifted the course of history, one grueling dogfight at a time. If that kind of epic history gets your motor running like it does mine, then you're absolutely in the right place. Today, we're strapping in and climbing high to examine the 10 deadliest fighter planes of World War II. Those flying fortresses and sleek destroyers that didn't just participate in battles, but utterly redefined them with their blistering speed, ferocious armament, and sheer, undeniable grit. If these incredible stories fuel your passion as much as they do mine, please take a quick second right now. Smash that subscribe button to officially join our growing crew of history fanatics. Give this video a huge thumbs up. If you live for aviation tales, and share it with anyone you know who can't get enough of World War II lore. Let's make sure these phenomenal legends are never forgotten. Now, make yourself comfortable, pour coffee, settle in, and let me walk you through the sagas of these magnificent machines. I've spent years gathering these accounts, from pilot diaries that still raise the hair on my arms, to declassified government reports that lay bare the genius engineering and battle analyses that pinpoint exactly how these planes swung the momentum for the Allies or gave the Axis a terrifying edge. We're counting them down from number 10 to the plane that was the ultimate game changer, always weaving in the compelling human stories that transform these aircraft from cold metal into symbols of courage and innovation. 10. The Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, the rugged brawler. Starting off our countdown at number 10 is the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk. This was a tough, no-nonsense beast. It might never have won a beauty contest or set speed records, but goodness did it deliver a staggering punch exactly when it mattered most, especially in the hands of the legendary Flying Tigers. Over the skies of China. You see, the P-40 actually grew out of the earlier Curtiss P-36 back in the late 1930s. Its design prioritized pure durability and battlefield resilience over cutting-edge speed. Powering it was in Schult, Allison V1 710 liquid-cooled V12 engine, which, in the first models, was capable of churning out about 1,150 horsepower. This gave the plane a respectable top speed of roughly 360 miles per hour and a service ceiling of 29,000 feet. But the real secret to its lethality wasn't simply on the spec sheet. It was the P-40's incredible ability to withstand brutal punishment, soaking up enemy fire that would instantly drop a flimsier fighter, yet somehow managing to limp its pilot back to base. Remember the American Volunteer Group AVG? Those so-called mercenaries who famously painted menacing shark mouths on their noses to terrify the Japanese? In the skies over Burma and China, they amassed close to 300 confirmed enemy kills while losing only about a dozen of their own planes in air combat. A powerful testament to the Warhawk's ruggedness in both ground attack missions and fierce dogfights against the more nimble Japanese Zeros. I've pored over the combat reports of their leader, Claire Chennault. His brilliant strategy detailed in those declassified memos, involved training his pilots to use dive and zoom tactics. This was key to compensating for the P-40's relative lack of maneuverability at certain altitudes. Those reports clearly show how subtle but critical engineering enhancements, things like reinforced airframes and self-sealing fuel tanks, transformed this initial underdog into a true battle changer. It successfully disrupted critical Japanese supply lines and bought the Allies invaluable time in the Pacific theater. One pilot's memoir that I absolutely love is by Tex Hill. He describes banking hard through blistering anti-aircraft fire over Rangoon, his P-40 shaking violently but holding its line as he unleashed his guns on enemy positions. You can practically feel that terrifying mix of adrenaline and fear in his words. It's stories like that which truly resurrect the history, isn't it? The Warhawk certainly had its weaknesses. It struggled at high altitudes against the German Bf 109S over Europe. But in the China-Burma-India theater, it was an absolute lifesaver. Over 13,700 units were produced, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that sometimes sheer reliability and toughness will always win out over flashy performance in the heat of war. And let's not overlook its crucial contribution in North Africa, where the British versions, called Tomahawks, held the line against Rommel's formidable Afrika Korps, providing the close air support that repeatedly blunted German armored advances. The tales from those desert airstrips, pilots landing on makeshift runways with engines coughing from the sand, yet ready for the very next sortie, that's pure, undiluted grit. 9. The Hawker Hurricane, the Battle of Britain's unsung hero. Moving on to number 9, we find the Pot Hawker Hurricane. This incredible aircraft is often unfairly overshadowed by its famously glamorous sister, the Spitfire. But let me set the record straight. This dependable workhorse was the authentic core hero of the Battle of Britain. It was the Hurricane, in fact, that was responsible for claiming an astonishing 60% of the Luftwaffe's losses during that desperate, defining summer of 1940. Designed in the mid-1930s, the Hurricane was built with a simple, robust structure, a metal frame partially covered in fabric. It was powered by the absolutely legendary Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, which, in its Mark I version, delivered 1,030 horsepower. This allowed it to hit 340 miles per hour and climb to 36,000 feet. Its initial armament was brutal. 8.303 machine guns. That could shred enemy bombers like tissue paper. What a phenomenal machine. In the personal accounts of pilots, including the likes of the irrepressible Douglas Bader, who flew Hurricanes despite having lost both legs, you often read about the plane's incredible stability. This characteristic was critical as it allowed for extremely precise and sustained gunnery passes on lumbering Heinkel bombers. In doing so, the Hurricane turned the tide when Great Britain literally stood alone. Declassified RAF reports specifically detail how its ease of repair. Mechanics could often patch up significant damage and get it back in the air in mere hours, kept squadrons operational during the relentless blitz. This engineering advantage fundamentally changed the battle by denying Hitler the air superiority he needed for invasion. I've treasured reading Bader's memoir, Reach for the Sky. His description of plunging through a bank of clouds to ambush a massive formation of Ju-80s, the Hurricane responding instantaneously, feeling like a natural extension of his own will, still gives me chills even after decades of immersion in these stories. The Hurricane was perhaps not as dazzlingly agile as the Spitfire in a pure dogfight, but for taking down heavy bombers and engaging ground targets, it was completely unmatched. Over 14,000 were built, and it saw action in every single theater of the war, from the besieged island of Malta to the vast plains of Russia. It begs a rhetorical question. How profoundly different would history be today if the Hurricane hadn't held that crucial line? It bought the vital time the Allies needed to reorganize and rearm, proving that often the unsung, dependable hero is the one who ultimately wins the show. 8. The Lockheed P-38. Lightning, the fork-tailed devil now. Let's shift our gaze to number 8. The B Lockheed P-38 Lightning. This was a distinctive, twin-boom marvel that looked like it flew straight out of a science fiction comic. Yet, it delivered very real terror to the Axis forces across both the European and Pacific theaters. Its completely unique design featured 2 Allison V1 710 engines, each capable of churning out 1,475 horsepower. This gave it a blistering top speed of 414 miles per hour and an amazing operational range of over 1,300 miles, making it the perfect choice for vital long-range bomber escorts and critical reconnaissance missions. But oh, the sheer impact it had on the war's critical moments. Remember, Operation Vengeance. That was the top secret mission to intercept and shoot down Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the mastermind behind the Pearl Harbor attack. P-38S flew a grueling 400 miles at wavetop level to finally intercept his transport plane. Pilots like Thomas Lanphier claimed the infamous kill in a devastating burst of .50 caliber machine gun and 20 millimeter cannon fire. This single, stunning strike demoralized the entire Japanese high command and irrevocably altered the momentum of the Pacific War. In pilot memoirs, such as Robin Olds, Fighter Pilot, where he recounts strafing German supply trains in Europe, you learn about the P-38's concentrated nose armament, 4 machine guns and a cannon, which made it a supremely deadly strafing platform. Declassified Army Air Force statistics from the Normandy campaign show it was responsible for destroying thousands of vehicles and aircraft on the ground. Post-war engineering reports later confirmed that its innovative turbo superchargers enabled high-altitude performance that completely outmatched many of its early foes. Though, to be fair, it initially wrestled with control issues, or compressibility, in extreme dives, which brilliant engineers later fixed with the addition of dive flaps. Can you even imagine the exhilarating thrill and the sheer fear of flying that distinctive, fork-tailed devil over the towering Himalayas or through the thick, flat clouds above Berlin? It was incredibly versatile, acting as a bomber, a heavy fighter, and a crucial photo reconnaissance platform. Aces like Richard Bong racked up an incredible 40 kills in the Pacific flying the Lightning, definitively proving its lethality. The P-38 fundamentally changed air warfare by massively extending the Allied air reach, enabling crucial deep strikes that crippled enemy logistical networks. It was truly a game changer in the hands of its daring pilots. 7. The Vought F-4U Corsair, Whistling Death. Transitioning now to number 7, we encounter the Vought F-4U Corsair. Immediately recognizable by its distinctive inverted gull wings and massive propeller, This was a plane that absolutely dominated the Pacific skies and earned a terrifying moniker, Whistling Death, from the Japanese, a nickname that came from the eerie sound its air intakes made as it dove. It was driven by the monstrous Pratt and Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, which pumped out a massive 2,000 horsepower. This power enabled it to reach 446 miles per hour and carry a truly heavy payload of bombs or rockets, making it exceptionally well suited for carrier operations and devastating ground support. And boy, did it change battles. Think of the legendary Black Sheep Squadron, led by the audacious Pappy Boyington. In his classic memoir, Ba Ba Black Sheep, he recounts dogfights over the Solomon Islands, where the Corsair's superior speed and lightning-fast climb rate allowed it to consistently outmaneuver the Japanese Zeros, achieving an unbelievable 11-to-1 kill ratio. Declassified Navy reports detail its very first combat deployments at Guadalcanal in 1943, where Corsairs instantly turned the air war. They provided such reliable close air support during the critical island-hopping campaigns, successfully destroying Japanese fortifications and supply ships alike. I've always been captivated by the ingenuity of the engineers who figured out how to solve the plane's initial tricky carrier landing problems by slightly raising the cockpit and installing a longer tailwheel. This series of fixes transformed a design with teething issues into an enduring naval legend that ultimately flew over 64,000 sorties. Picture Boyington twisting violently through the clouds, his 6.5 zero-caliber guns spitting fire, downing multiple enemies in a single, adrenaline-fueled mission. That's the powerful human element that makes these aviation stories eternal. The Corsair's versatility even extended into the Korean War, but during World War II, it was instrumental in securing decisive air superiority in the Pacific, helping to shorten the brutal war by grinding Japanese resistance down, island by island. 6. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, the Jug. And now, for number 6, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, a veritable juggernaut affectionately nicknamed the Jug because of its bulky, powerful fuselage. This was a plane that could simply absorb damage like almost no other. A true tank of the skies that excelled in both devastating ground attack and vital bomber escort duties over Europe. It featured the absolutely massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 radial engine, which, with water injection, delivered an astonishing 2,600 horsepower. This allowed it to hit 433 miles per hour and maintain a huge combat range of 800 miles with external drop tanks. Its ferocious armament was 8.50 caliber machine guns and the capacity to carry up to 2,500 pounds of bombs. What an absolute powerhouse. In pivotal battles like the Normandy invasion, P-47s utterly savaged German armored columns. Declassified Army Air Force statistics show that they destroyed an estimated 86,000 railcars, 9,000 locomotives, and countless tanks. This crippling damage to the Wehrmacht's mobility effectively cleared the path for the Allied advance across Europe. Pilot memoirs, such as the accounts of Ace Francis Gabreski, described diving through thick flak to obliterate bridges and supply trains, with the Jug's famous ruggedness constantly saving lives when hit. There is a famous story of one pilot who returned to base with an entire engine cylinder shot completely off, yet the engine somehow kept running. Engineering reports from the era highlight the highly effective turbocharger that gave it exceptional high-altitude performance. This advantage fundamentally changed the air war by allowing it to reliably protect Allied bombers from determined Luftwaffe interceptors during major operations like Big Week in 1944. Can you imagine the sheer vibration of the stick as you unleash those 8 machine guns on a panzer division below? The P-47 took down 3,752 enemy aircraft in the air, while destroying a phenomenal number of ground targets that turned the strategic tide in Europe. Over 15,600 units were produced, a true beast that perfectly embodied American industrial might and determination. 5. The Supermarine Spitfire, a symbol of defiance. Now, as we continue our journey through these magnificent flying machines that utterly defined the skies of World War II, let's talk about number 5, the Supermarine Spitfire. This truly elegant beauty, with its distinctive elliptical wings, seemed to dance through the clouds with a grace no other plane could match. It quite literally saved Britain during her darkest hour, instantly becoming a powerful, enduring symbol of defiance and hope for a nation under relentless siege. Oh, where do we even begin with the Spitfire? It was originally conceived by the brilliant Reginald Mitchell in the mid-1930s as a direct response to the burgeoning military threat from the continent. It was initially powered by the ubiquitous Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, which in its early Mark the Fern configuration delivered about 1,030 horsepower, pushing it to a top speed of 362 miles per hour and a ceiling of 34,000 feet. It was armed with 8.303 Browning machine guns that could scythe through enemy bombers in a terrifying hail of lead. But its true strength was not merely in the numbers. It was the plane's incredible agility, the way it could turn on a sixpence and climb with the urgency of a rocket, consistently outmaneuvering the very best fighters the Luftwaffe could throw at it during the Battle of Britain in 1940. There, Spitfires, working in perfect, deadly tandem with the Hurricanes, were credited with over 500 enemy kills, effectively breaking the back of Goering's air armada. I voraciously consumed countless pilot accounts. Test pilot. Jeffrey Quill, for example, wrote of the sheer thrill of pushing the Spitfire through impossible loops and rolls during factory trials, feeling its perfect response under extreme stress. And then there are Douglas Bader's famous tales of fearlessly leading his squadrons into the maelstrom, his prosthetic legs a complete non-issue as he corkscrewed through the sky to shoot down a Dornier over the River Thames. Declassified RAF reports specifically highlight how its innovative laminar flow wing significantly reduced drag, which was crucial to its superior performance, ultimately changing battles by achieving the air superiority that decisively halted Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain, and gave the Allies the essential foothold to fight back. Can you truly imagine the nerve-wracking tension inside those cockpits? The radar plots suddenly lighting up with massive incoming raids, the pilots frantically scrambling to their waiting spits, their hearts pounding, knowing full well that any sortie could be their very last. The Spitfire, too, constantly evolved. By 1942, the Mark V, with its Merlin 45 engine boosted to 1,470 horsepower, could hit 370 miles per hour, and it went on to serve everywhere from the desperate defense of Malta to the vast deserts of North Africa, where it provided air cover for Montgomery's 8th Army against Rommel's forces. One memoir that I will never forget is from Alan Deere, an ace who somehow survived being shot down an astounding 7 times. On one occasion, he bailed out over the channel after a brutal tussle with Bf-109s, his Spitfire engulfed in flames but somehow holding together just long enough to save his life. That is what I call an engineering miracle. Over 20,000 units were ultimately produced across 24 variants, including the carrier-based Seafire. It wasn't completely flawless. Early models suffered from carburetor flooding during negative G dives, a problem famously solved with Miss Schilling's orifice. But its cultural and military impact was absolutely profound, dramatically boosting national morale and proving that British ingenuity could and would stand firm against tyranny. 4. The Messerschmitt Bf-109, the predator of the Blitzkrieg. Shifting to number 4, we confront the Fappen, Messerschmitt Bf-109. The sleek, aggressive predator from the Axis side. This was Willy Messerschmitt's undeniable masterpiece, a fighter that terrorized Europe all the way from the Spanish Civil War onwards. It was the very embodiment of the Blitzkrieg's fury. The Bf-109, in its E model, was powered by the fantastic Daimler-Benz DB 601 inverted V12 engine, which cranked out 1,100 horsepower. This propelled it to a top speed of 357 miles per hour and gave it a ceiling of 36,000 feet. It was armed with 2 7.92 millimeter machine guns and 2 potent 20 millimeter cannons, which made it a lethal, formidable dogfighter. This was the legendary mount of aces like Erich Hartmann, who tallied an astonishing 352 kills, mostly on the Eastern Front. His memoir recounts terrifying, hair-raising pursuits through the Russian skies, effortlessly outturning Soviet Yaks and Lavochkins, thanks to the 109's responsive, crisp controls. Declassified Luftwaffe documents clearly illustrate how this aircraft fundamentally changed battles in Poland and France, 1939 to 1940, providing the essential air cover that allowed the panzer divisions to roll forward virtually unmolested. However, it finally met its match over Britain, where its severely limited range, only allowing about 20 minutes over the city of London, frequently forced pilots to disengage early. This critical limitation played a major role in the ultimate failure of the Battle of Britain. Picture the Star of Africa, Hans Joachim Marseille, weaving through Allied bomber formations over the desert, famously downing 17 planes in a single day in 1942. His Bf-109G obeyed his every command as he perfectly exploited its superior climb rate and concentrated firepower. Engineering reports proudly highlight the slotted flaps and leading-edge slats that dramatically enhanced its low-speed handling. Unfortunately, critical vulnerabilities, such as its very narrow undercarriage, led to a high number of taxing landing and takeoff accidents. Nevertheless, with over 33,000 built, the plane was absolutely everywhere, from the frozen steppes of Russia to the blistering heat of the Mediterranean. It claimed thousands of victims, but was ultimately overwhelmed by the sheer, relentless numbers of Allied aircraft. What a stark contrast to our Allied fighters, yet we must concede respect for how it undeniably pushed aviation technology forward, even if it fought on the wrong side of history. 3. The Mitsubishi A6M0, the Whisper of Death Now. For number 3, the Mitsubishi A6M0, the Silent Lethal, Whisper of Death. In the Pacific Theater. This carrier-borne Japanese marvel stunned the entire world at Pearl Harbor. It was powered by the Nakajima Sakai radial engine, delivering 950 horsepower, which allowed it to achieve 331 miles per hour, and a simply staggering operational range of over 1,600 miles with external drop tanks. It was armed with two 7.7 millimeter machine guns and two devastating 20 millimeter cannons that tore through early Allied fighters like paper. Incredibly lightweight and maneuverable to an absurd degree, it utterly dominated the skies throughout 1941 and 1942, racking up kill ratios as high as 12-1. In the skilled hands of elite pilots like Sir Shi Saburo Sakai. His classic autobiography chronicles epic aerial duels over Guadalcanal, where he was forced to constantly loop and roll to evade incoming wildcats while landing fatal, precise bursts. Battle accounts from the crucial Midway Fissure engagement show how Zero's providing escort initially overwhelmed the beleaguered U.S. defenses. However, a terrible vulnerability was its downfall. The Zero had virtually no armor or self-sealing fuel tanks. This meant a single well-aimed hit could instantly transform it into a flaming wreck, a flaw that American pilots quickly learned to exploit as their tactics evolved toward decisive hit-and-run dives. Declassified Navy reports reveal its stunning combat debut over China in 1940, where it achieved total air superiority, effectively enabling and sustaining the swift Japanese expansion. But by 1943, due to massive losses of irreplaceable veteran pilots at Coral Sea and Midway, and now facing the superior Grumman Hellcat, its technological edge was rapidly dulled. Over 10,900 Unsung were built, but tragically, many would end their days as desperate kamikazes. Imagine Sakai, barely conscious, limping his plane home after a horrific brush with a dauntless gunner, his Zero holding together through sheer force of will. Stories like that humanize the enemy and underscore the immense role the plane played in prolonging the Pacific agony. 2. The Focke-Wulf FW 190 Virger. The Butcher Bird. Easing into our penultimate spot at number 2 is the Focke-Wulf FW 190 Virger. The dreaded Butcher Bird. A name that immediately struck fear into the hearts of Allied air crews when it first appeared in 1941. This was Kurt Tank's brutal, radial-engined powerhouse. It featured a massive BMW 801 engine, delivering an astounding 1,700 horsepower, pushing it to 426 miles per hour. Armed with 420 millimeter cannons and two machine guns, it could literally eviscerate heavy Allied bombers in a single, well-aimed pass. This was the aircraft that turned the Channel Front into a graveyard for RAF raids. German aces like Joseph Priller, who racked up over 100 kills, described in his accounts the unbelievable stability of the plane, which allowed for surgical gunnery against even the nimble Spitfires. Declassified reports from Operation Jubilee at Dieppe in 1942 show FW-190's utterly decimating Allied air support, claiming 97 victories for minimal losses. This success dramatically changed the course of that battle by ruthlessly denying air cover to the invading ground forces. Its engineering brilliance was evident in the wide-track landing gear for use on rough, forward airfields and its heavily armored cockpit. However, it struggled significantly at higher altitudes until the introduction of the later D model, which featured an inline Jumo engine. From the deep mud of the Eastern Front to the hedgerows of Normandy, over 20,000 were built. It was an incredibly adaptable fighter, quickly modified for ground attack with bombs and rockets, as seen in the desperate Bodenplatte operation of 1945. One vivid tale, recounted by Otto Ernst Raymer, who flew them in the defense of Berlin, speaks of the deafening roar as you dove on the B-17 bomber formations, the Werger's firepower tearing wings off its targets. Pure, unadulterated intensity. 1. The North American P-51 Mustang, the war winner. And now, pressing on to our absolute top spot, the fighter that, in my professional opinion, after all these decades of poring over dusty archives and speaking with veterans, truly stands alone. Number 1 is the North American P-51 Mustang, the legendary long-range escort fighter that completely inverted the air war over Europe. It was the plane that finally allowed Allied bombers to penetrate deep into the heart of Nazi Germany and bring the Third Reich to its knees with sustained, unrelenting precision. Ah, the Mustang. What an incredible story of rapid evolution and ultimate triumph. It began life as a simple British commission in 1940, when North American aviation boldly promised to deliver a superior fighter to the P-40 in just 120 days. They delivered it in an astonishing 117. It was initially powered by the Allison Phi 1710 engine, which gave it a respectable top speed of about 390 miles per hour, but performance suffered at high altitude. Then came the true stroke of genius. The engineers swapped the Allison for the magnificent Rolls-Royce Merlin 61 engine, license built by Packard as the V1650. This instantly boosted its horsepower to 1,490 and pushed its top speed to a blazing 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. Crucially, it gave the plane an operational range of over 1,650 miles with drop tanks, officially making it the only fighter capable of providing full escort to the Allied heavy bombers all the way to Berlin and back. This beautiful machine was armed with 6 .50 caliber Browning machine guns in the wings, capable of tearing apart everything from FW-190s to the emerging Me-262 jets. But it was the unbeatable trifecta of speed, range, and maneuverability that changed the strategic course of the war forever. This was most evident during the P-51 offensive in February 1944. Mustangs escorted the bombers deep into German territory and back, destroying 157 Luftwaffe fighters in the air while losing only 21 of their own. Declassified 8th Air Force reports show how this blow effectively crippled German aircraft production and their critical pilot training pipeline. I've had the immense privilege of reading the accounts of Don Blakesley, the legendary commander of the 4th Fighter Group, who described leading his Debden Eagles in their olive-drab Mustangs through savage dogfights over the Reich. On one mission, he personally downed 2 Bf-10-9s in quick succession while protecting a straggling fortress bomber. The P-51's revolutionary bubble canopy gave its pilots unmatched visibility, a factor that single-handedly saved countless lives. Engineering marvels like the laminar flow wing dramatically reduced drag for peak efficiency, while self-sealing tanks and armor made it incredibly survivable. Can you vividly feel the wind scream past as you jettison your drop tanks over the English Channel, climbing hard to meet the enemy at 30,000 feet? Your Merlin engine, humming like a perfect symphony of power. The Mustang was much more than just a fighter. It was a bona fide war winner. Over 15,000 were produced. It served in every theater, but it shone brightest over Europe, where some groups achieved a staggering 19-to-1 kill ratio. It made the D-Day invasion possible by effectively sweeping the skies clear of enemy opposition. Beyond the top 10, the wider war in the air. And as we conclude our countdown, let's take a moment to acknowledge the wider tapestry of the air war. We can't forget how these fighters intertwined in epic clashes, like the Pacific duels where planes like the Grumman F-6F Hellcat excelled. While unranked here, the Hellcat absolutely deserves a nod as a phenomenal zero killer with its quintessential Grumman toughness, downing over 5,000 Japanese planes, while losing only about 270 in air combat. It single-handedly transformed the carrier war from Midway all the way to Okinawa. Or consider the Soviet Yakovlev Yak-3, a nimble, low-altitude scrapper that effectively ruled the Eastern Front skies after 1943. Its Klimov VK-105 engine pushed it to 408 miles per hour, and its 3 cannons shredded FW-190s. Pilots like Ivan Kozydub, the ultimate Allied ace with 62 kills, detailed in his writings how turning fights over Kursk finally turned the strategic tide against the Luftwaffe. These planes never operated in isolation. They were integral parts of a complex, grand symphony of strategic warfare, from the B combined bomber offensive, where P-51s and P-47s decimated German industry, to the relentless island-hopping campaign where P-38s and F-4Us provided the essential air umbrella for Marines storming the beaches. Think also of the incredible human cost. Pilots like George Preddy, who scored 26.8, 3 kills in his Mustang. Cripes a Mighty, before tragically being felled by friendly fire over the Ardennes. His diary entries reveal the crushing exhaustion and fierce camaraderie that fueled these true heroes. Declassified intelligence briefs show how Allied codebreakers used ultra intercepts to strategically position fighters like Spitfires for devastating ambushes during the Battle of Britain, or how Japanese radar pickets were sometimes blinded by P-38 strikes in the Philippines, allowing U.S. fleets to advance undetected. I've spent countless evenings by the fire recounting these stories to my own grandkids, always emphasizing not just the technology, but the sheer bravery, like the Tuskegee Airmen in their red-tailed P-51s, who flew escort for bombers without losing a single one to enemy fighters, simultaneously breaking social barriers on the ground while dominating the air. And let's briefly dive into the engineering rivalries. The magnificent Merlin engine that powered both the Spitfire and the Mustang, a British jewel that Americans learned to mass produce to perfection. Or the German jets, like the formidable Me-262, that outsped everything the Allies had, but were severely hampered by debilitating fuel shortages and unreliable Jumo 004 turbines. Pilot Adolf Galland lamented in his memoir Schalkes, The First and the Last, about the frantic scrambles to intercept the massive bomber streams, only to be overwhelmed and swarmed by a flood of Mustangs. What if the Axis had managed to field more of those revolutionary jets? History might have dragged on considerably, but the sheer industrial numbers bound of Allied fighters, over 100,000 produced on versus Germany's 30,000, ultimately overwhelmed them, serving as a powerful, enduring lesson in the nature of industrial warfare. Transitioning to a few lesser-known gems, there was the Italian Machi C-205 Veltro, a sleek, high performer with a DB605 engine hitting 399 miles per hour. It bravely held its own against P-51s over the Mediterranean in 1943. Accounts from ace Adriano Visconti, who claimed 26 victories, perfectly illustrate dogfights that crucially delayed Allied advances in Sicily, or the French WWII D-520, which in 1940 scored 147 kills against the mighty Luftwaffe before the French surrender, its Hispano-Suiza engine and cannon armament proving deadly in the right hands, buying precious, fleeting time during the Battle of France. These brave underdogs remind us that innovation was never a monopoly. Even Romanian IAR-80s tangled effectively with Soviet bombers over the oil fields, their radial engines and 4 guns changing battles on a localized level. But back to our stars, imagine the raw drama over Ploesti. In 1943, P-38s diving through an inferno of flak to strike at the critical oil refineries, or the valiant Hurricanes desperately defending Singapore, in vain against overwhelming numbers of Zeros, with pilots like Frank Carey somehow downing 5 in one single day despite the impossible odds. Such incredible tales weave the complex, profound fabric of World War II aviation, full of what-ifs and monumental heroics that still utterly captivate me after all these decades. And as we truly reflect on the phenomenal legacies of these magnificent machines, from the Warhawk's early, desperate stands to the Mustang's final glorious triumphs, it becomes crystal clear that they didn't merely change battles. They literally shaped the world we inhabit today. Whew, we've truly journeyed far and wide through these incredible skies, folks. If the passion in these stories has ignited something in you, like it always does in me, do yourself a huge favor. Subscribe now to ensure you catch more of these epic narratives, like this video. If it stirred your soul, comment below with a battle you'd love for us to cover next, and share it far and wide with every history-loving friend you have. Your incredible support is what keeps the flames of this history soaring bright.